The military ceremony hall buzzed with controlled routine until Commander Harrison's impatience reached its breaking point. "Move that aide to the back row, Sergeant Thompson," he commanded, irritation clear in his voice. The unremarkable woman in standard dress uniform stood quietly near the equipment when the presidential security detail performed one action that changed everything. The effect was immediate. The protocol officer's clipboard clattered to the floor. Senior officers froze at their positions and faces drained of color throughout the ceremony hall. No one had expected the president to ignore the receiving line. No one had expected the quiet woman relegated to the back to receive the first salute. No one had expected the truth. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If this story captivated you, please consider subscribing. We share powerful stories of unsung heroes every week. The classified ceremony hall hummed with the constant buzz of advanced preparations and muted conversations. Banks of cameras cast bright light across focused faces, illuminating guest lists dotted with red VIP markers and yellow security alerts. The air carried the scent of polished brass and formal uniforms, mixed with the tension that came with handling top-secret presidential visits. It was 1,100 hours on what had begun as a standard morning preparation at Fort McNamara Presidential Reception Center, buried beneath the Virginia countryside. Protocol Assistant Third Class Sarah Martinez stood at her assigned coordination station, deliberately unremarkable in her standard dress blue uniform and regulation ceremonial equipment. Her brown hair was pulled back in a regulation chignon, no visible identification except for a temporary protocol badge. Mid-20s, with an observant face that spoke of attention to detail rather than ceremonial authority. Her hazel eyes moved constantly between guest lists and monitoring systems, while her presence demanded nothing from the intensity around her. To a casual observer, she might have been any assistant, a recent transfer from civilian protocol perhaps, or another face in the endless rotation of ceremonial personnel. She occasionally made notes on a standard tablet, her handwriting neat and precise. Unlike the officers and senior staff who filled the hall with their ribbons and presidential access credentials, she wore no visible markers of advanced clearance or specialized training. Just an assistant, it seemed, with basic access and an assignment to verify routine ceremonial compliance. The presidential visit underway involved classified presentation of advanced military honors for overseas operations. The visit had proceeded through standard phases, initial security, protocol verification, and now ceremonial review before final presentation approval. Ceremonial Coordinator Williams, a veteran protocol officer with something to prove, managed the preparation protocols with practiced efficiency, moving between positions and checking status displays throughout the ceremony floor. The presidential visit had established security parameters that required careful verification, Williams explained to the ceremony director, his voice carrying across the preparation bay. The decision to proceed with final approval created complications for standard protocol procedures. Commander Harrison sat rigid at the ceremony control console, his face a careful mask. A distinguished ceremony director with 15 years of classified protocol experience, he looked somehow troubled in his dress uniform, as if the weight of the classified ceremonies had physically aged him in recent months. Sarah watched it all, her expression revealing nothing. Only the occasional glance toward the main preparation terminals suggested any emotional response to the ongoing procedures. When the ceremony director called for a protocol update, heads turned in mild surprise as Sarah raised her hand slightly from her position at the coordination station. Assistant Martinez has been conducting final compliance checks, Ceremonial Coordinator Williams announced. She may have additional assessment of ceremony readiness. She moved toward the main ceremony area with a deliberate precision that seemed at odds with her assistant role. Something about her bearing, spine straight, steps measured, attention focused, caught the notice of a distinguished colonel seated near the main display. He frowned slightly, studying her with newfound interest. Commander Harrison, sharp-eyed and methodical, watched her with narrowed attention as she prepared her compliance assessment. The commander was known for his no-nonsense approach to ceremony security and protocol procedures. Today, he wore his authority like a burden, his dress uniform crisp despite the morning hour. "Please state your findings for the record," instructed Commander Harrison. Protocol Assistant Third Class, Sarah Martinez, Ceremonial Compliance Specialist, she replied. Her voice was soft but clear, her professional bearing perfect. Ceremonial Coordinator Williams began his questioning, and Sarah's responses were factual and precise, but delivered in such a measured, quiet tone that Commander Harrison soon grew visibly impatient. Several times, the ceremony recorder had to ask her to repeat her statements. Assistant Martinez, Commander Harrison finally interrupted. The entire ceremony team needs to hear your compliance assessment clearly. Please speak up. Yes, Commander, Sarah responded, barely raising her volume. Ceremonial Coordinator Williams continued. Assistant Martinez, can you explain your assessment of the ceremony's protocol compliance status? I've been conducting standard verification procedures and monitoring ceremonial performance according to established protocol guidelines, she replied, her voice still frustratingly soft. I've identified several factors that affect presentation certification based on current preparation parameters. And what were your findings during verification procedures? I determined that the ceremonial arrangements respond normally to standard operational testing. I also noted significant preparation patterns that indicate potential security considerations. Did you document these observations? Yes, I logged all ceremony responses and attempted preparation analysis through available protocol specifications. Was this analysis reviewed by ceremonial management? It was not forwarded beyond my immediate coordination supervisor. The ceremony security officer, Major Patricia Reynolds, approached for additional questioning with a skeptical demeanor. Tall and imposing with steel-gray hair that lent her an air of authority, she moved with the confidence of someone accustomed to challenging questionable compliance assessments. Assistant Martinez, what specific protocol training qualifies you to analyze advanced presidential ceremony security? I completed basic ceremonial verification during my protocol certification program. And what level of security clearance? Her tone suggested the answer would confirm Martinez's limitations. I maintain appropriate clearance levels for protocol assistant contractor work, Sarah responded evenly. Major Reynolds smiled thinly. Assistant Martinez, how could you possibly understand the complexities of classified presidential ceremonies and security protocols when you've been coordinating events for only 8 weeks? Something flickered across Commander Harrison's face. A brief shadow of recognition quickly suppressed. He studied Sarah more intently now. Objection to characterization, Ceremonial Coordinator Williams called out. Assistant Martinez's compliance assessments should be evaluated on merit. Sustained, Commander Harrison replied, his eyes never leaving Sarah. Major Reynolds adjusted her approach. Let me rephrase. What specific experience do you have with classified presidential ceremonies in military protocol environments? Sarah paused before answering, her eyes briefly meeting those of the distinguished colonel near the main display. My background includes some practical application of ceremonial compliance analysis, she said carefully. Could you be more specific? That information involves previous assignments that may not be relevant to current coordination requirements. Major Reynolds looked to the ceremony director. Commander, if the assistant lacks relevant experience with classified ceremonies, her compliance assessments should be considered accordingly. I'll allow the line of questioning, Commander Harrison ruled. Assistant Martinez, please provide more detail about your relevant experience. Sarah's expression remained neutral. My previous ceremonial experience involves classified presidential programs. How convenient, Major Reynolds remarked dryly. So we're expected to trust your protocol assessments without knowing your actual qualifications to evaluate classified presidential ceremonies? I'm reporting on compliance observations I made using established ceremonial protocols. As the questioning continued, Sarah responded with increasingly precise details about presidential procedures, security protocols, and ceremony procedures that made several senior officers in the hall exchange glances. She referenced specific ceremonial configurations, protocol methods, and security measures that seemed beyond the knowledge base of a standard protocol assistant. When shown presidential ceremony diagrams, her eyes lingered on them a moment longer than necessary, her composure wavering almost imperceptibly before returning to professional detachment. Do you recognize these ceremonial specifications, Assistant Martinez? Major Reynolds asked. Yes, they represent the presidential ceremonies I've been verifying for compliance certification. And your analysis of these specifications proved to be, what exactly? The compliance observations you made about ceremony security, how does that affect current presentation approval? Sarah's voice remained steady. The ceremonial analysis I conducted indicated presidential protocols that weren't reflected in current security evaluations. My observations about compliance standards were documented in my coordination reports. In the ceremony hall, the older colonel with silver hair and multiple presidential service badges watched Sarah with growing intensity, his brow furrowed in concentration as if trying to place a half-remembered voice from security briefings. The morning hours passed as ceremonial coordinator Williams returned for follow-up questions, asking Sarah about specific compliance requirements for the current ceremony. Can you explain the standard protocols for certifying a classified presidential ceremony of this nature? Williams asked. The ceremony team would have established primary and secondary verification procedures with security oversight, she explained, her voice still frustratingly soft. Standard protocol requires verified preparation results and clearance confirmation at predetermined security levels. And if those procedures were insufficient or compromised, the backup verification would proceed using alternative assessment methods after primary compliance was evaluated, utilizing specialized security protocols on confirmed classification ceremonies. She explained with a level of presidential precision that raised eyebrows among the ceremony staff present. Commander Harrison leaned forward, his patience visibly wearing thin. Assistant Martinez, I've asked you repeatedly to speak up. This ceremony hall cannot properly evaluate compliance assessments it cannot hear clearly. I apologize, Commander, Sarah replied, her volume barely increasing. The older colonel in the hall now sat forward at his monitoring station, his eyes never leaving Sarah's face. Recognition seemed to be dawning slowly, his expression shifting from curiosity to something closer to alarm. Major Reynolds seized on the commander's frustration. Perhaps Assistant Martinez's reluctance to speak clearly reflects her limited confidence in her own compliance assessments. Ceremonial Coordinator Williams stood immediately. Ma'am, that's inappropriate speculation. Noted, Williams, Commander Harrison replied sharply. Major Reynolds, confine your remarks to relevant questions for the assistant. Major Reynolds nodded in acknowledgement. Assistant Martinez, in your assessment as a protocol professional, was there anything about the presidential ceremony that indicated modified security requirements? Sarah looked directly at the main ceremony display for the first time. The compliance assessment suggested security modifications beyond current protocol estimates. That wasn't my question. Based on what you observed, should security procedures have been modified? Based on the ceremonial patterns I identified, yes. But my assessment was not included in ceremony planning. Major Reynolds' expression hardened. Are you suggesting that compliance information was deliberately ignored by ceremonial management? I'm stating that the ceremonial analysis I provided differed significantly from the security assessment that was distributed to ceremony personnel. The ceremony hall stirred with murmurs. Commander Harrison tapped his pen once against his desk, restoring order. Assistant Martinez, Commander Harrison said, his voice tight, with growing impatience. You'll need to explain that assertion clearly and audibly for the ceremony staff. What specifically was different about your analysis? Sarah paused, her eyes scanning the ceremony hall briefly before returning to the commander. When she spoke, her voice remained soft, forcing everyone to lean forward to hear. My ceremonial analysis indicated that the presidential protocols included security features using methods normally reserved for state security operations. That information was not included in the compliance briefing provided to ceremony personnel. Commander Harrison's head snapped up, his carefully maintained composure cracking for the first time. The distinguished colonel's expression darkened as he studied Sarah with new intensity. Assistant Martinez, Commander Harrison said firmly, frustration evident in his tone. This is the final time I will ask you to speak louder. The entire ceremony staff must be able to hear compliance assessments accurately. Sarah looked directly at Commander Harrison. A look of quiet recognition passed between them, though the commander quickly masked it with professional detachment. The veteran colonel in the hall was now gripping his monitoring station, his knuckles white. Commander Harrison finally interrupted with visible impatience, leaning forward at his ceremony console. Assistant Martinez, we don't have all morning. Speak clearly or we'll proceed with ceremony approval without additional protocol input. The ceremony hall fell silent. For the first time since beginning her assessment, Sarah looked directly at Commander Harrison. A look of quiet recognition passed between them, though the commander quickly masked it. The distinguished colonel near the ceremony display leaned forward, his hands gripping his monitoring station. Suddenly, the hall's main doors opened and the presidential security detail entered, followed immediately by the President of the United States. The entire ceremony hall snapped to attention as protocol demanded, forming a perfect receiving line with Commander Harrison at the front, senior officers arranged by rank, and junior personnel, including Sarah, relegated to the back row as ordered. The President entered with customary dignity, scanning the assembled military personnel with the practiced eye of a commander-in-chief. But instead of proceeding to the receiving line as protocol demanded, the President's eyes found Sarah Martinez standing quietly in the back row. Without hesitation, the President walked directly past the entire receiving line, past Commander Harrison, past all the senior officers, and stopped directly in front of Sarah. The effect was immediate and electric. Commander Harrison's ceremonial sword nearly fell from his grip. Several ceremony staff physically straightened in shock as if witnessing something impossible. Major Reynolds's face drained of color. The distinguished colonel near the ceremony display stood up involuntarily, his expression shifting to stunned recognition. The President rendered a crisp, respectful salute directly to Sarah Martinez. The silence in the ceremony hall was deafening as everyone realized they were witnessing something unprecedented in military protocol. Sarah returned the salute with perfect military bearing, her soft voice now carrying clearly across the silent hall. "Mr. President." The President's voice carried the weight of absolute authority as he addressed the stunned ceremony hall. "Ladies and gentlemen, I present Chief of Staff Sarah Martinez, recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom, former Director of National Security Operations, and the architect of the Strategic Intelligence Program that prevented 3 separate attacks on American soil." Complete silence fell over the ceremony hall as recognition dawned across various faces. Some looked confused, others shocked, and a few, those who understood the significance of what they had just witnessed, appeared stricken. The President continued in a voice that commanded absolute attention. "Chief Martinez has been operating under deep cover for the past 4 years, gathering intelligence on security breaches within our own military protocol systems. Her assignment was classified at the highest levels, known only to myself and the Joint Chiefs of Staff." Sarah methodically produced a worn, waterproof security case from her dress uniform pocket and held it up for the ceremony staff to see. "This contains classified operational records from Operation Silent Shield, not the sanitized reports filed with military protocol. These ceremonial assessments weren't just routine compliance checks. They were counterintelligence operations designed to identify security vulnerabilities in our most sensitive military ceremonies." Commander Harrison attempted to call for order, but found his voice failing him. "Assistant Martinez, this is highly irregular procedure for ceremonial assessment. My operations team and I discovered a network of compromised military contractors selling presidential ceremony security information to foreign intelligence agencies," Sarah continued calmly. "I've spent 4 years working under assumed identity and documenting security breaches that could endanger the President and compromise national security during state functions." A younger protocol officer near the ceremony terminals looked up in confusion. "This is impossible. Chief Martinez was reassigned to Pentagon Special Operations. I processed transfer orders myself." The distinguished colonel turned to address him. "Stay at your station, Lieutenant," he said quietly. "Look at that presidential recognition. The Commander-in-Chief doesn't salute protocol assistants." Sarah opened her security case to reveal operational blueprints, presidential clearances, and classified documentation. "My team discovered that General Patricia Stone was facilitating ceremonial security transfers to foreign intelligence services through a network of compromised military contractors, the same network that provided false security specifications to multiple presidential events over the past 3 years." The ceremony hall erupted into controlled chaos. Commander Harrison tapped his pen repeatedly on his desk, finally restoring some semblance of order. His face had lost all color, and his hand trembled visibly. "This ceremony hall will pause current operations for 30 minutes, he declared, his voice unsteady. But before anyone could move, the president spoke again. With respect, Commander, this ceremony will continue as scheduled. But I want everyone to understand that Chief Martinez has just completed one of the most important counterintelligence operations in recent military history. Commander Harrison slowly leaned back in his position, his authority visibly shaken. He nodded once, a gesture of reluctant acknowledgement. Operation Silent Shield was classified above top secret. Sarah continued. Our mission was to identify security vulnerabilities in presidential ceremonies that could be exploited by hostile intelligence agencies. We discovered that General Stone was providing our ceremonial specifications to foreign agents through a sophisticated espionage operation with protocol records linking directly to enemy governments. She turned her security case and removed an encrypted data chip. This contains ceremonial blueprints, security algorithms, and protocol procedures. We documented this evidence over 4 years of undercover operations. The intelligence gathered prevented multiple potential security breaches during presidential events. Major Reynolds stood, her voice hollow. I received direct confirmation from General Stone that Silent Shield operations had been concluded. The program was terminated due to budget constraints. The program was never terminated, Sarah said simply. It was reclassified and continued under presidential directive. I heard your voice questioning protocol modifications, Major Reynolds. You suspected something was wrong with the security changes. Ceremonial Coordinator Williams approached Sarah cautiously. Chief Martinez, if what you're saying is true, how did you maintain cover for 4 years? And why risk exposure during this ceremony? Sarah's composure never wavered as the president remained beside her. The operation required deep cover to identify all participants in the security breach network. By the time we understood the full scope of the conspiracy, General Stone had been promoted to ceremonial oversight for all presidential events. We needed to document her activities without alerting her network. She looked around the ceremony hall, meeting the eyes of several senior staff members. This ceremony was chosen because it represented the final piece of evidence we needed. General Stone personally modified the security protocols for today's presidential visit, creating vulnerabilities that would have compromised the president's safety. The distinguished colonel approached the central ceremony area. Commander, request permission to address the ceremony staff. I am Colonel Marcus Webb, Presidential Security Division. I was the liaison for Operation Silent Shield. He turned to face Sarah. Chief Martinez was one of the finest intelligence officers I ever worked with. If she says our ceremonies were compromised, we should listen without question. Major Reynolds interjected. This is all highly dramatic, but it raises serious questions about protocol integrity. Presidential ceremonies operate according to established security procedures, not some undercover investigation. The investigations were necessary, the president replied directly. The ceremonial security breaches Chief Martinez documented could have resulted in successful attacks on multiple state functions. Her work potentially saved lives and protected national security. Sarah pulled another document from her security case. This is a security summary showing that my team reported protocol vulnerabilities directly to General Stone 12 times over 4 years. We were told explicitly that questioning ceremonial security would compromise critical presidential operations. We weren't being paranoid. We were protecting the commander-in-chief. Commander Harrison studied the document, his ceremonial leadership demeanor cracking further. These security reports weren't included in the ceremony briefing I received for today's presidential visit. Because they were deliberately removed, Sarah said, just like current security assessments are being modified to hide ongoing intelligence transfers. General Stone has been systematically compromising presidential ceremony security for foreign intelligence agencies. The ceremony hall had grown absolutely still despite the continuing presidential presence. Every person present was aware they were witnessing something extraordinary. Even the protocol officers had stopped their routine monitoring, staring at Sarah with undisguised astonishment. Ceremonial Coordinator Williams approached the ceremony console. Commander, in light of this intelligence, I recommend immediate review of all ceremonial security and potentially investigating other presidential events for compromise. The president nodded approvingly. All presidential ceremony security will be immediately reviewed under Chief Martinez's oversight. We will not tolerate foreign intelligence interference in American state functions. As staff began coordinating the security changes, Sarah spoke again. There's something else you should know, Commander. She removed a final document from her security case. This is the original security clearance for Operation Silent Shield with your signature from when you served as protocol liaison. You authorized my deep cover assignment 4 years ago. Commander Harrison took the document with trembling hands. I signed this authorization, he whispered, recognition dawning in his voice. I authorized the counterintelligence operation, but was told the operative's identity was classified beyond my clearance level. Yes, Sarah confirmed. You've been unknowingly supervising the operation you authorized. The protocol modifications you questioned were part of my intelligence gathering. The retired Colonel Webb moved closer. I always wondered why you seemed uncertain about certain ceremonial changes, Harrison. You were actually responding to Sarah's intelligence reports. Commander Harrison looked up, visible emotion crossing his face. I've spent 4 years managing ceremonies while knowing something felt wrong about our security protocols. I authorized the investigation, but I never knew who was conducting it. The President's communications detail crackled, and additional presidential security personnel appeared at the ceremony entrance, led by a stern-faced senior agent. Mr. President, we're ready to proceed with General Stone's arrest based on the evidence provided by Chief Martinez. The President smiled approvingly as the ceremony continued under heightened security. Right on schedule, he commented. The senior agent's voice carried across the ceremony hall. You would be Chief Martinez, Operation Silent Shield Commander. I would be, Mr. President. Outstanding work, Chief. Your intelligence prevented what could have been catastrophic security breaches. Thank you, Mr. President. For years of preparation for this moment. The President addressed the ceremony hall directly. Commander Harrison, with my authority, I'm officially concluding Operation Silent Shield and restoring Chief Martinez to her proper rank and recognition. She will oversee the security review of all presidential ceremonial functions. Commander Harrison nodded toward the President. Of course, Mr. President. But I want to understand how we missed this intelligence operation for 4 years. Because it was designed to be invisible, the President replied. The best counterintelligence work goes unnoticed until the moment it's revealed. The ceremony hall began to reorganize as presidential protocol required, but Major Reynolds remained at her monitoring station, looking shell-shocked. Sarah approached her quietly while the President conferred with his security detail. I don't understand, Reynolds said, looking up at her. Why would you endure 4 years of dismissal and disrespect? I've been treating you like a junior assistant. Because the operation required absolute authenticity, Sarah replied simply. You had to believe I was exactly what I appeared to be. Any special treatment would have compromised the investigation and potentially alerted General Stone's network. How can you be certain the intelligence you gathered was worth 4 years of your career? Sarah allowed herself the smallest of smiles, glancing at the President still conferring with his security team. Because preventing attacks on the Commander-in-Chief is worth any personal sacrifice. That's what we swore to do when we took our oaths. Major Reynolds' eyes widened. All those protocol questions you asked, you were actually testing our security responses. Every interaction was intelligence gathering, Sarah admitted. I needed to understand who was following legitimate security protocols and who might be compromised by General Stone's network. As the President prepared to continue with the ceremony, Colonel Webb approached as security protocols normalized. Chief Martinez, he said formally, then dropped his voice. Sarah, maintaining cover for 4 years while gathering intelligence, that required extraordinary dedication. The mission required whatever sacrifice was necessary, she replied quietly. The President's security couldn't be compromised because of my personal comfort. What happens to ceremonial security now? Sarah looked at the ceremony displays showing current presidential preparations. Now it operates with honest security assessment and proper vulnerability testing. The Commander-in-Chief can be protected because someone finally exposed the intelligence transfers. The ceremony hall remained suspended in a moment of stunned revelation as presidential protocols continued around them. Commander Harrison slowly approached Sarah and rendered a respectful salute before addressing the ceremony staff. This ceremony recognizes Chief of Staff Sarah Martinez, recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom, architect of Operation Silent Shield. He announced formally, his voice carrying a weight of regret and respect. Colonel Webb approached Sarah and rendered a respectful acknowledgement. Others throughout the ceremony hall followed suit, a ripple of recognition spreading through the room. Ceremonial personnel who had moments ago regarded her with dismissal now stood in acknowledgement, honoring a fellow officer whose integrity had cost her recognition for 4 years. Major Reynolds, visibly shaken, stood to address Sarah directly. "I've been treating you like a junior assistant for months. I never knew who you really were." "That was necessary for the operation's success," Sarah replied. "Your authentic reactions confirmed that the cover identity was effective." "I questioned some of your protocol suggestions," Reynolds admitted, her voice reflecting new understanding. "And those questions became part of the intelligence assessment," Sarah confirmed. "Your security instincts were sound. You were reacting to legitimate concerns about ceremonial vulnerabilities." Commander Harrison's professional demeanor softened as he turned to face the ceremony staff. "I authorized Operation Silent Shield based on presidential directive regarding ceremony security concerns. I did not know the identity of the operative, but I authorized the counterintelligence mission that has protected multiple presidential events over 4 years. You've been successfully overseeing an operation while maintaining operational security," Sarah confirmed. "The protocol changes you questioned were part of the intelligence testing." The President's security team confirmed the successful conclusion of the operation. Commander Harrison, Presidential Ceremony Security will continue under enhanced protocols with Chief Martinez's oversight. This represents a significant victory for national security. The ceremony hall began to return to presidential protocol as security measures normalized, but the impact of the revelation continued to resonate among all personnel present. As the president prepared to proceed with the ceremony, Sarah opened her security case and carefully displayed photographs showing General Stone meeting with known foreign intelligence contacts and military contractors. "This operation was never about personal recognition," she said softly, addressing the ceremony hall. "It was about protecting the commander-in-chief and ensuring that American ceremonial security serves national interests rather than foreign intelligence agencies." As the ceremony continued under presidential oversight, Sarah's role transformed from dismissed assistant to recognized intelligence chief, the shadow of an undercover operative standing at attention rather than a protocol assistant checking compliance. For a moment, she paused to observe the ceremony preparations proceeding under proper security protocols. The ceremony staff was coordinating with accurate security information for the first time in years. Commander Harrison was directing protocols with restored confidence in his security systems. Major Reynolds was working to implement enhanced ceremonial security measures. Colonel Webb watched from near the presidential area, his face reflecting a complex mix of pride and determination. Sarah gave him a small nod before taking her proper position in the ceremony as Chief of Staff. Her mission was complete. 4 years of sacrifice had culminated in exposing a significant intelligence threat and protecting presidential security. The counterintelligence operation had succeeded beyond expectations. But the most important achievement was accomplished. The president was safe, and ceremonial security could operate with integrity rather than foreign intelligence interference. As the ceremony proceeded with proper protocol, the president approached Sarah one final time. "Chief Martinez, your service exemplifies the highest traditions of American intelligence work." She rendered a perfect salute. "Thank you, Mr. President. Protecting the commander-in-chief is the highest honor." The ceremony continued under restored security protocols while Sarah took her rightful place among the senior staff. Ceremonial personnel, protocol officers, security specialists. For 4 years, she had lived invisibly, unremarkable and dismissed, gathering intelligence while pretending to be a routine assistant. Now she stood openly, her authority restored, her mission accomplished. Colonel Webb approached her as the ceremony concluded. "Chief Martinez," he said quietly, "what you accomplished, maintaining deep cover, gathering critical intelligence, exposing a major security threat, it represents counterintelligence work of the highest caliber. The operation required whatever sacrifice was necessary to protect national security," she replied simply. "It was more than duty," he insisted. "It was courage and dedication that protected the highest levels of American government." Sarah allowed herself a smile as the ceremony concluded successfully. "The mission parameters were clear, Colonel. Sometimes protecting America requires invisible service." He watched the ceremony conclude with proper security, then turned to Commander Harrison, who had joined them. Some of the most important intelligence work goes unrecognized for years, he said quietly. But when it's revealed, it changes everything. Commander Harrison nodded, watching Sarah receive recognition from the president. And some operations are worth waiting years to understand their true importance. The afternoon light strengthened as the presidential motorcade prepared to depart from Fort McNamara Presidential Reception Center. Behind them, the ceremony hall buzzed with renewed purpose as military protocols moved forward with proper security procedures and adequate vulnerability assessment. The ceremony staff worked with restored confidence, knowing their operations would proceed without foreign intelligence interference. The challenge ahead involved implementing comprehensive security reviews and ensuring complete protection for all presidential functions. But for now, in this moment between concealment and revelation, the simple act of completing a counterintelligence mission had transformed a routine ceremony into something historic. The power of one officer's quiet determination to protect the commander-in-chief and serve national security, even when it meant sacrificing recognition and enduring years of dismissal to gather the evidence necessary to expose threats that powerful forces had tried to maintain indefinitely. As the presidential motorcade departed, Sarah's radio crackled with updates from ceremony security. All presidential protocols have been restored to maximum security classification. Intelligence operation concluded with complete success. Sarah smiled for the first time in 4 years, knowing that presidential security would now be protected by honest protocols rather than compromised by foreign intelligence operations.